Hi guys. Hi. So I don't know if you know the story about the lagging fabrics, but we now have given everybody a chance to pick up their kits because all the fabrics are arrived. And in the process of sending out kits to everybody, one person's kit got lost. I had to replace it with my own kit. I also sold my second kit. So luckily UPS has delivered my kit back to here, so I'm going to work on the quilt. And so I have read this book many times now, back and forth, making sure I understand it, made some sample blocks. I'm happy with my sample blocks. I haven't had a lot of problems with the cut. I'm using my scat 1/4 inch to get everything nice and to size, and that's working well for me. But I know some of you are just opening your bags and just opening your boxes as they've come in the courier, and some of you may have already opened your box and been like, what have I done? So I want to help you guys get through that first little blip here. So the first thing I have done, if you look in the corner, you'll see that I have laid out my fabrics. And I've laid out my fabrics to match the map that's in this book. So I'm doing the smoke version, which means I have more variety of fabrics than the rest of you. So there is that. So as I'm talking around, I'm talking about, my fabric XY, TUV and X. You guys don't have that fabric. I don't even know if you have an S. But my fabric grouping has more than any other rest. So it doesn't have more fabric, but it has more variety of fabrics. So as we're talking, know that not everybody's fabric F is such and such a quantity or such and such a fabric, and it might not be used for the same thing. So as we're talking about fabrics, please make sure that you start using those foreground, background, and main fabric or feature fabric conversation points, because from one quilt to the other they're different. Now, for example, the Delft quilt only goes to fabric Q. The gemstone quilt goes to fabric O. Smoke goes to X, and Scarlet goes to O. So I'd like you to just take some care when you're talking to other quilters from our group that you're talking about the same one. If you're talking about if you're both doing Delft, then you can both talk about the same letter of fabric. But if one's doing gemstone and one's doing Scarlet, you can't necessarily do that. So when I laid out my fabric here, I can see that the largest cut of fabric, I'm going to switch to the table for a second here so you can see. It's a little bit of an odd angle here, but you can see that this cut of fabric is substantially bigger than my smallest, the latest in the alphabet. The alphabetical listing of fabrics is by size of cut instead of by any other rational grouping. It's by size of cut. So as you're looking at your fabrics and you have them laid out in this order, you'll see that there's a variety of sizes of fabric. And that's because we're doing different things with the different fabrics. So how do we address this? What I have done is along the bottom here is I've made little pieces of paper that have alphabet on it. You can do it with stickers, you can do it with a marker right on the fabric if you're using a friction pen, but I've done it with little pieces of paper just like this. So in my little zone here, I've got A through X. The next thing that I did, and I've worked ahead, so you can pause because we're doing this on YouTube, you can pause this video at any time. So I have then taken my book, so I'm using this page of the book to start. I've checked to make sure there's no errata for my colorway, and if you are gemstone or Delft, you need the errata. So please go check the update that we have on. I'm going to send out an announcement this afternoon to say, hey, there's a video. So go check that email. I'll put the word errata, ERRATA, in the subject line so that you guys can go and Google that to get to or you can search your emails for errata and get that. So there's two changes to two different colorways. One change each, I think. So what I've done is I've gone to page 14. And on page 14, there is a chart at the bottom that says square and a square and rectangle units by color story. What those mean are we've got a background and a foreground fabric, if you think of it as chairs around a table. The chairs are the center, and the floor is the corner. That's your, I know it sounds ridiculous, but that's it. So the center is not your main fabric. The center is your chair, okay? And the corner is the background fabric. So, foreground and background fabrics, but we're going to use what they've, just to keep ourselves super straight here, when I write it on my letters, I am writing what they've called it. They've called it center and corner. Center / corner, and then underneath I've got alphabet, E/H. E is a center, H is a corner. And so I am writing that down right on the bottom of this. So my alphabet's laid out in front of me, and I'm going to go to B, and I'm going to write corner. And I'm going to E and writing corner. And then my first one on here is EH, center, corner. So then I've got, oh, I'm sorry, I'm on smoke. Stay in your colorway. So mine are HC, center, corner. HC. H says center, C says corner. Makes me think of those songs my kid sings. Okay, so he does this to us all the time. I know I do these asides all the time, but my son does this. I say center, you say corner. But now we're going to do, I say foreground, you say center. There you go. So I've laid it all out, and I've written down every letter here that is either a corner or a center has the word corner center on here. That's part 1. Part 2, go to page 15, and then you're going to see a little chart on page 15, and the little chart on page 15, which you're not seeing because I'm on the screen, is right here, and it says, just to make things easy, block centers. Those are our mains. That is that table in the center of the chairs. That is our feature fabric surrounded by background and foreground. So our feature fabrics are listed there for us. So for me, I'm smoke, and my fabrics are ST, UV, W, and X. And so I've gone to ST, UV, W, and X, and I've written feature fabrics on them, because I'm not writing center, because that's going to confuse me when I go back and look at my D's and my H's. So feature fabrics. Then, now I kind of know there's a couple that aren't spoken for. For me, my A fabric is not spoken for, my F fabric is not spoken for, and my R fabric is not spoken for. For yours, it might be something different, but that's going to be sashing, it's going to be your cornerstones, and it's going to be sashing, cornerstones, and binding. Is that right? I think it's right. So then I go through this page 16, and I'm looking at, if I work my way down there, it says fabric A, sashing strip. So I take A and I write the word sashing on it. And then I look a little further along, and I'm still not sure, but if I go to the cutting chart now, see how we're all over the place? It's not written by an engineer. Okay, so we go back to our cutting charts, and we can eyeball our way down, and on Scarlet, I see the cornerstones come up in fabric C. And if I keep going down the other ones, I see fabric F in smoke is binding, and in gemstone, there's binding as well. And then for Delft, that's going to be the tricky one that I think wrote it twice. So we've got corner squares, block center squares come up a couple times. So you're going to just take a second and figure out which one is your sashing by reading through this chart. On the first one you'll see sashing is fabric A. Check for your cornerstones and if there's binding. Okay, so now I've got my alphabet written on everything here. And I know this video, you can stop at any time. I pushed the wrong button, sorry about that. So you can go back to your alphabet, take a break here, make sure you've got that part of it done, and then you're going to, so pause, and come back. So now you're going to work your way through that alphabet. You're going to put it on each of your fabrics. Now your fabrics, hopefully, are in alphabetical order, so that's going to be easy. So let's do that. So I'm going to switch back to the other screen so you can see that happening. Okay, so super fun to watch me do this, but there's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, and N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, and X. All right, so now I know what all my fabrics are. I'm in a place with no fan. If you have any kind of movement or rustling, or you're going to think you're going to be walking away before you've done this next step, pin these on. And pinning is pretty easy. Just grab a pin. You can either poke it right through the top, or you can actually be very careful and put it on the selvage. Or you can use your marker. Okay, so at this point too, if you've written everything very clearly, if you've used like 5x7 cards or something and you've written it nice and clear on there, you could take a picture of your layout, but I don't need this at this point. So now I want to look at my feature fabrics. So I'm going to pull them out. I'm going to make a group for feature fabrics. And I can see feature fabrics, and I'm lucky on mine because my feature fabrics are all at the end. So there's my feature fabrics. Now I'm going to grab my cornerstone, I'm going to grab my binding, and I'm going to grab my sashing, and I'm putting them over here by themselves. Next I am going to grab all my centers and my corners, and split them out. I'm leaving my letters on there. Don't let your letters run away from you. Okay, so now I've got this group here and this group here, and Kay's my weirdo. And I look to see if it makes sense. Kay's a weirdo for me, so I'm just going to double check K. So if I go to my chart that's right here at the bottom again, I'm going to check to see where K comes up. K is a center. So I'm glad I noticed that. So K is a center. And now I've got my corner box. That makes more sense. And I've got E in the wrong place. There. And I can do that visually because I'm looking at color groupings. You should have some hots and some cools, or if it's going to be blues and whites, or is it going to be reds and greens, you're going to see that variation. So for mine, it's a bunch of cool fabrics as background and a bunch of hot fabrics as foreground. It's a bunch of low volume, high volume. There you go. There's another version of it. Okay, so there I've got my corners. Now I'm looking at size of the cuts. And is anything confusing here because it's a giant cut? Well, yeah. My this polka dot over here is looks to be a much bigger cut than the rest of them, and so does B. So I'm going to double check. Are C and B anything else as well? Nope. On mine, they're nothing else. So it's just lots of them, and they're going to be used quite a bit. But in this grouping, I don't really see anything except maybe the lupin is a bit more than anything else. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just double checking. Haven't got anything mislabeled. I feel comfortable with it. And now I'm starting to understand what's going to happen. I'm going to have, so if I look at my cutting chart, my square and a square and rectangle units by color story. And just for experimentation's sake, I'm going to grab fabric H and fabric C. So I've got fabric C, and I'm grabbing fabric H, and that's going to be my chairs on that table. So that's what's happening here, is why we've got to split it out this way. So there you go. Get that done. I'll come back to the main screen here instead of you guys talking to my waistline. There you go. Okay. So that helps you sort your fabrics. And now you've got it by group, and now it's a little bit more reasonable. Some of you have asked us about switching out your sashing. You can do whatever you want. There's no contest for doing this the way they did it. But this is a great guide to us starting to understand color and color valuation. So that's why we're doing it this way. But you are welcome to move on. And here's an example of something I'm going to do. I want my feature fabrics to be features. And so I have 2 fabrics in my features that I think they're kind of wobbly. So they're not quite janky, but I'm not quite sure. Whereas I've got this brassica that I love, and the feathers, and the geodes, and the milfoil. Those are awesome, but I'm not sure about these 2. So I think I'm going to pick 2 different fabrics for this. Some of you reached out and asked about doing a dark Delft sashing instead of the jumbo. Or the shark's tooth. So if you look at this quilt, I'll put it in the corner there. Do you see that quilt? That is not an anchored quilt. The Delft quilt is effervescent and floaty. You've got tables floating in the air. It's a beautiful, brilliant blue floating quilt. It's not going to weigh your bed down in your design. You guys reacted to this one, and I think the main reaction is the blue, because everybody loves blue in quilting land. But I think perhaps you were also reacting to the brightness and lightness and effervescence of it. So if you think you might want to change your sashing, don't cut your sashing fabric yet. Leave it off to the side. Leave it in its bag. You can cut it at the end, because we all know it's good to lay down your blocks on your sashing and make sure that you like it the way it looks. For me, I'm changing out those. If there's any fabric you hate, if there's a fabric you think that is the jankiest fabric in the whole book, go grab that fabric, come to the store, and look at the other fabrics and find one that's a good substitute. You could bring your whole quilt kit with you, and we'll lay out fabrics and we'll take a look for a substitute for you. For me, I just have 2 feature fabrics I'm going to change. So today's the day I'm doing some cutting. You can go ahead and come back to the next video when you're done your cutting. You can just watch all the videos, because I know some of you are never going to make this quilt that happens. So you've got some beautiful K fabrics in your stash, but if you are going to make this quilt, come back after the next video, and the next video you will be cut. We'll be looking at maybe working a practice block. So while you're at it, take your stash, find a resonating combination. So you've got that. In mine, it's a hot foreground, a cool background, and a great feature fabric that picks up both of those tones. So that's my quilt, and so I'm going to find sample fabrics from my junk stash that I can get those small pieces out of to create this. So you guys do that too, and we're going to work on, next time we're going to look at cutting and how to sort out our piles. All right. Talk to you soon. Good luck.